Let's talk comedy. Frankie Boyle has attacked in a podcast his fellow comedian Ricky Gervais. He is upset. Frankie is upset because Ricky, in his stand-up routine, made some jokes about trans people, specifically Caitlyn Jenner, referring to Caitlyn by her what they call, I think, dead name, which is the name that she had before she became a woman. And Frankie Boyle finds this offensive. He calls it lazy. And he's calling for Ricky to not be offensive. Ricky, who is a much, much, much more successful and, in my view, funnier comedian, but that's just my personal view, but he's certainly more successful, a global superstar, has risen above all this, will not be commenting, but I suspect is probably having a wry smile at Frankie Boyle's expense. But why would Frankie Boyle feel he is in a position to attack another comedian for being offensive? Frankie Boyle, of course, is the man who made a series of jokes about Katie Price's disabled son Harvey, felt that Harvey was a worthy victim of his cruel humour. So hypocrisy doesn't begin to cover it. Why on earth is Frankie is pot calling the kettle black? Why is he attacking Ricky Gervais? And for God's sake, why can't comedians be offensive? In my view, most of the funniest jokes involve offence, causing offence. If someone's not offended by a joke, it's probably not funny. That's a rule of comedy, if you ask me. Why can't comedians be funny? Why doesn't Frankie Boyle lay off Ricky Gervais for daring to make a couple of jokes about trans people? Let's talk to comedian and the co-host of Trigonometry, a podcast, Konstantin Kisin. Good morning, Konstantin.
Morning, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. What do you think about this? I mean, let's deal with the issue first. I think comedians should be allowed to be offensive. It's not against the law to offend people. If you're going to tell comedians that every joke you ever make must never offend anyone, then there won't be any comedians. There'll be nothing to laugh at. Am I right?
Well, you are right, and Frankie Boyle circa 2010 would agree with you. This is the real issue here, is that Frankie Boyle made his whole career on doing some really grotesque jokes, and both you and I appreciate offensive comedy, but some of it at the time was too much even for me. But what I did at the time is I went, well, I don't like this joke, I'll wait for the next one. And if we all had that approach, I don't think this would be an issue. But the issue here is that he made the career making these offensive jokes. And now he's turned around and he's saying that other people are being offensive and disrespectful and whatever else. It's hypocrisy. I said yesterday, it's like being lectured by Joseph Fritzl about the importance of letting your kids play outside. It's...
See, that's an offensive joke, Chris.
It is, but funny one at the same time, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly.
This is my point. You mentioned earlier in the program how you thought it was maybe something to do with jealousy, and I hadn't thought of it. But now that you mention it, I mean, if you think about, Ricky Gervais is in Hollywood, making any TV show that he wants, and some of them have been absolutely brilliant, obviously. And Frankie Boyle spends half his time on his show talking to BLM activists, pretending to be comedians. So maybe he's just frustrated about that. I don't know. It's absolutely gobsmacking that he would try to criticize. And look, I understand people change their mind. People change as they grow older. People change as their circumstances change. And I would say Frankie Boyle is a very good writer of jokes. Some of his jokes used to be brilliant.
He used to be, when he didn't mind being offensive. In fact, when he made a kind of whole point and living out of being offensive, I thought he was very, very funny. Now, he had this sort of new incarnation where, in order... it seemed to me to be employed by the BBC. He suddenly came over all woke and far less funny. He now is saying, what is he? This was in the Grounded podcast with Louis Theroux.
Yeah.
Frankie Boyle said of Ricky Gervais that he what did he say here? He said that. Where's the quote?
Well, one of the things he said...
He said he's a brilliant actor, he's a brilliant writer, but he's not a bleeping stand-up comedian. I would like him to show the same respect for trans people as he seems to have for animals. I don't think that's a lot to ask. Well, Ricky is a great campaigner for animal welfare, and good for him for that. And I don't think that making a few jokes about trans people means you don't respect them, does it?
Well, absolutely. And I don't think if Frankie Boyle had made some jokes about animals, Ricky would be there going, oh, you can't say this. This is the point. Yes. And look, if Frankie Boyle has become this new woke, campaigner, that's fine. Got no problem with that. In that case, if you think that all the jokes you made in the past were wrong, come out and go, look, I'm sorry, I made these jokes. I'm giving back all the money that I made doing them. I'm resigning from all my TV jobs that I got by doing those jokes. And now I'm going to campaign against offensive comedy. No problem. I said the same thing about Matt Lucas and David Walliams when they started apologizing about Little Britain. If you regret what you did, give back the money.
Yes, exactly. But what about this, just the general issue? We've got to get out of this business of banning or kind of culturally banning comedians or indeed comedy programs from being offensive, because it has resulted in almost a total lack of anything funny on the telly for a kickoff. It's also going to result, even in live comedy, in comedians being less and less funny. We have to break free from the shackles of this weird new belief that to cause offence is to commit a crime. It's not against the law to be offensive.
Not yet.
Good point. I think. Sorry to say this, but I think all good jokes have a victim.
It's true. And I would say you talk about the broader culture, which is something, as you know, I care a lot about. I'm afraid my analysis is that it's not going to happen on television. It's just not. The people who control comedy on TV, they're not interested in making it funny. They're interested in making a political point about progressive politics. And that is all that they care about. And so what you will end up with is worse and worse comedy on television. Fortunately, we have the internet. And I think that is essentially where the new brand of comedy is going to come from. Because, it's a problem actually of my generation, Kevin, this woke stuff. Younger people who are younger than that, they aren't like this. They actually appreciate offensive comedy.
Yes.
And that's why the internet will be the solution, I hope. On my show on Trigonometry, we've started doing a comedy show called That Was the Woke That Was. We released the first one a couple of weeks ago.
Good.
And we'll be doing a monthly one. So, I think the internet is the answer. And as long as the Hamza Yusuf in Scotland and other people like him don't get their way and don't outlaw actually people being offensive, which is what they're trying to do, then we can continue to create content on the internet that will actually make people laugh. And as long as we have that option, I think there will be a pushback. But it's very sad to see, as you say, that on television it's not happening.
Yeah, well, whilst you people are doing good work online, on the internet, television comedy is dying a terrible, painful death on television. But keep up the good work, Konstantin. That's your Trigonometry podcast. Get on in there. I love the sound of That Was the Woke That Was. Good work there, mate. Konstantin Kisin there, comedian, co-host of the Trigonometry podcast, on Frankie Boyle's sudden reincarnation as a terribly woke individual who disapproves of Ricky Gervais daring to make a joke about trans people.